Hey, welcome back, Braxton's War Room. Taking a look today at another SCS title, War One, Drive on Paris. Drive on Paris. Here we go. This is SCS series volume number 7, published in 2000. Alan Wombold is the designer, and it's funny how I don't know why, but these old gamers boxes, even though I kind of like them, the design, even though they're a little bit dated. But I do like them. I don't know, they're evocative to me. Okay, so this game, last I played Rock of the Marne, and this game is somewhat quite a bit different. There's a lot more to it than Rock of the Marne, which I'm a little bit excited about, especially the way that it's looking to model this early part of the war. And so this Drive on Paris is the opening attack, the German attack, the opening hostilities. Starting in, we got turn 1 is August 4th, and going all the way up to November 11th. Each turn is 3 days long, and works the same way as any other SCS game. But the sequence of play is a little bit different. Actually, significantly different, I guess, from Rock of the Marne. So I'm going to go through it really quick, just to show the similarities and the differences. So everything starts the same: reinforcements and reconstitution instead of replacements in this game. So I'm actually liking this already a little bit better, the way it does it. So in Rock of the Marne, you had automatic replacements, whether you got them or not. It was assigned to the turn track. Here we go by the headquarters unit. That number in the middle, the 4 on the left, is their range. In the center, that is the number of replacements or reconstitution actions they can take during that turn. So if a headquarters unit is not in an EZOC, enemy zone of control, they can reconstitute one unit, basically replenish one step for one unit that's eligible. Let's see, the reinforcements in this game, quite a few actually, and way too many to put on the turn track. I created my own little sheets here. You can see there are a lot of German units that are going to be coming in, which makes sense, and quite a few British and French units as well. So yeah, they come in at mobilization points, which is different than in the Rock of the Marne game. So here you've got the German mobilization points all down in this area, and you'll see these little marks, little blue markers that I put on the stacks. There's a mobilization point underneath those stacks. And the same goes with the French. Here, there, here, and here. And one way over here next to Lille. And that is where they come in, so it's not like they're coming in from a map edge. And one really cool thing, which I'll talk a little bit better, is that you're able to use the trains in this game. So all the railroad hexes are extremely important, and I'll get into that a little bit as I go through these stereo-specific rules or the game rules. So after that, there is reserve marker placement. So similar to OCS, which I'm finally playing after many years of not. You can take units, certain units, and you can put them in reserve to use them for the exploitation phase, which during this time of the war makes sense. Cavalry units were used for that. There weren't any tanks yet, but cavalry units were definitely used to try to exploit the best they could. And there were some other areas, other units, and the way this game models that is there are certain German units that have this white background to their movement. They are actually eligible up to turn 8 to force march. I can use them in the exploitation phase, just like I could anything else. Obviously, they can't move too far, and you actually have to roll on their movement to see if they can use their full movement or not, which makes sense because whether or not they've been used during combat, and obviously would matter about their capability to march further after they've been fighting. After reserve placement, we got movement under overrun combat. So I think there's going to be a little bit more overruns in this game comparative to Rock of the Marne, where I really didn't see any opportunities to do that, or didn't want to deplete my troops to do that. It's probably something that the Allies should have tried. But in this game, I see more opportunities just because it's more wide open. It's much more mobile. So Then we've got combat, and in the combat phase, the first thing that we do is siege gun combat. Now, the siege guns, obviously, are the famous Skodas and the Krupps, which come in on turns 2 and 3. They have to arrive by rail, and they can only move by rail. And you have to move them up adjacent to a fort. Obviously, historically, the fort at Liege was the one that put up some of the biggest, the forts at Liege, I should say, because it was the surrounding forts of the city of Liege, and were pounded into submission by the Skoda guns. And you have to move up adjacent on the rail line and start bombarding them during the siege gun combat phase. And there is historically the Germans had these special assault troops, the MH assault troops, which come in, and you get a modifier by having those assault troops adjacent to the fort that you are actually bombarding with your siege guns. And siege guns can only move by rail, which is great because that's exactly how it worked. After that, there's regular combat. Then there's breakthrough combat. So on the CRT, you can see down here the result with the star is a breakthrough result. And what that is, and the other result, the little other marker, that is a fort reduction, which I'll talk about in a minute. So after all regular combats are complete, then you would do the results of the breakthrough combat. And essentially, it's just those units can attack again. So it's like a continued assault, basically. Just makes it interesting. And after combat, we've got the exploitation phase. So anybody that is eligible for exploitation can move and overrun, just like normally in the game. And then supply is very similar to other SES games. Very simple, very abstracted, but fine with me for this kind of game. And then after that, move on to the Allied player turn. So that was Germans first, Allies second. So that is it for the sequence of play. I'm going to go over really quick some of the special rules in this game, which I think are very cool, and I'm pretty excited about. So I already talked about the reserves. One of them is trains. Each side gets quite a few trains that will be coming in during reinforcements, and that's their movement points there, and there you see coming in there. And that number that you see on the left-hand side, that is the capacity. That's the number of units they can move on rail. So it's going to be obviously very important for the Germans to be using that. It costs 10 movement points of the train to load and unload. Reinforcements do not pay that loading penalty of the loading cost to move them, to put them on the train. So they can just come right in if the trains are coming in and available, which will be pretty cool. And historically that makes sense. Let's see, I already talked about headquarters. One thing you do have to use in this game are the railhead markers, which is important to show once the units, they get intermingled. You can keep track of who owns what. I'm unable to focus on that, but there we go. All right, the railhead marker, which you have to mark, obviously, when units, you can see the extent of who controls what rail, because your trains can't move through a rail line which has an enemy sock in it. So that's what those are for. Talked about reconstitution briefly already. Let's see here. Oh, I went out of focus there. That's pretty weird. I don't know why. There we go. Finally back. Sorry about that. Okay, reconstitution, I mentioned that. Going on to fortresses. So fortresses, a lot of fortresses here at the beginning of the map. A whole bunch up here near Antwerp, which have different levels. This is the amount of strength that they add for defense. The famous Liege force is a 14, and that some of these forts have 4 steps. So I have separate markers once they get reduced that I'll have to be putting them in those spots. Historically, at the beginning of the war, the fortresses were a real headache for the Germans when they were trying to pass through Belgium, and they had to bring up the MH assault troops, which I think I mentioned already, and they finally were able, with the help of the siege guns, were finally able to break up the forts and got them to surrender. But it slowed down the German plan drastically, the Schlieffen plan, and they lost a lot of important time. So after fortresses, you can build trenches after starting on turn 11, which is in September. And that was after the Miracle of the Marne, when the French pushed the Germans back, hit the Germans were coming, swung this way to attack the French that were going to Alsace-Lorraine, and the French came out of Paris, hit the German right flank, and pushed them back across the Océan River. And that's where they started to make their entrenchments. And so you can start doing that after turn 11 and not before. And the Allies cannot entrench until after the Germans complete a trench. Let's see. I talked about the mobilization points already. I don't think I need to go over that again. And we have the Belgian Operations. Nothing that important that really contributes that much to the game. I think most of it is for historical reasons, just to show the presence of the Belgian army, what they can and cannot do. We do have the French taxis and buses, which played a very small role in shuttling out troops at the Battle of the Marne. So you can use them twice to move, I think, 2 troops each. Throws a little bit of chrome in there, a little bit interesting flavor. Let's see. There is the French Doctrine line restrictions. It's kind of hard to see, but this yellow line you see going up here, any troops that start on the left side or come in on the left side of that line cannot move past that line. And this had to do with, because the French plan early in the war was just to attack through Alsace-Lorraine, and they were not able to move back and do that. So let's see here. So now, if the Germans cross the French panic line north here at Paris, that's completely out the window and there are no restrictions. So that's a little bit of nice flavor. Let's see, I talked about all that already. And the last thing I'll mention is the transfers to the Eastern Front. After turn 6, the Germans have to remove, I think it's 3 corps, and they are removed from the game because they're going out east to help defend against the Russian assault coming in through Prussia. And that, of course, is when the famous battles of Tannenberg and Masurian Lakes took place. But to simulate that, I have to remove 3 corps as the Germans. And that is it. There's a couple little minor rules which aren't worth mentioning. Getting a little too long on this introduction already. But I'm really excited about this. I really like what I see, and I'm on a big World War I kick right now, and maybe that's because of the armistice, 100-year anniversary of the armistice approaching. But I'm really getting into the World War I games that are out there right now, so this is very cool. So I'll probably go through and the first couple turns I'll give it updates on what's happening, and then depending how the game goes, if I think it's worth it and exciting to watch or interesting, I will record maybe every 2 or 3 turns like I did in Rock of the Marne. All right, well, thanks for watching. Looking forward to this, and I'll be back soon. Take care.